Okay, people, we'll start this extraordinary meeting of council with the karakia.
Toru, kia tauna tanga atu meo nao, ki runga, ki tēnā tātou, kia mahia te kura, kihi, kia toi te whiku, toi te rana, toi te reo Māori, toi te reo Māori. Kia tutu, ka whakamaua, kia tina, ria i tāie.
Thank you. Do we have any conflicts of interest?
That would be me.
Conflict of interest from Councillor Bowyer. Thank you.
Would you like me to remove myself from the room?
Craig and I have talked about this as from the point of view that Craig is involved with the airport. I have suggested to Craig that he just removes himself from the table and sits in the audience seat to listen to the conversation. He okay if he listens to the conversation? Is that all right with you, Craig?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies? No apologies. We have Councillor Helena online. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Nice jersey.
No late items. And we then go to reports for decision, which is the Auditor and Nautical Charges Review. And Matt.
Kia ora, Your Worship, councillors. I will take the paper as read, but I will step us through it. So this is a recommendation to approve the consultation document. We're also seeking a recommendation to authorise the Mayor and the CE to approve corrections of any minor typographical, editorial or arithmetic and formulaic errors. So the Hood Aerodrome, the charges at Hood have not been reviewed for a number of years. So we are wanting to consult with the users on a proposed set of changes. The driver behind this is a review that was undertaken by staff earlier this year as directed by Council. The focus is attempting to get equity across the rates. So the service that is used is the same for everybody. Therefore, no one should be paying more than another or being advantaged more than another. User pays, so the principle of trying to align with our policy settings, which is more around user pays, and our policy speaks to 60% being funded by the users and 40% by community rates. So we're quite a long way from that at this point. We've considered heavier aircraft, creating more wear and tear, and that is reflected in the proposed changes. The grassed areas are safety areas, so the cost of maintenance should be included in operational costs. Airport management and compliance activities and all operational costs should be shared. Fee collection needs to be administratively simple. It's not a huge amount of money or revenue that we get from Hood, so we need to have efficient systems and processes in place to collect the revenue. Terminal user pays by for the terminal, users pay for the use of the terminal. The analysis and the results of the work earlier this year was that Masterton are non-compliant with the Civil Aviation Act simply because of the extended period where a review has not been undertaken. The Hood unit users have had benefit of no changes to the charges for a considerable period of time. The current pricing structure is ambiguous. There's lots of different rates that are applied and discounts that have been adopted over a period of time. So there's a lack of consistency and also equity and transparency. Revenue generated is around 8% of our operational costs. And as I said, council policy, the revenue and financing policy targets 60%. The low utilisation rate would mean that it's actually, we wouldn't be able to increase the rates enough to achieve that 60%. It wouldn't be affordable for users. We've done a comparative analysis across a number of similar type aerodromes in New Zealand, and it's very clear that our current charges are amongst the lowest. So we're looking to just be in line with what's happening in the market. The consultation document is laid out, has been provided. There are a couple of errors that have been spotted in the consultation document which also align with the paper, and that is on under the second table.
What page?
Sorry, I don't have
Page 7.
the stellar version. Oh, sorry. Oh, here we go. Yes, page 8. So there's a couple of references, there's 3 actually, to flat rates applying to 5,700 kg. There's actually 6.5. Charge on an individual calculator basis for aircraft over 5,700 is actually 6,501. Further down, in relation to terminal charges, 5,700 should be 6,500. I am happy to take any questions. David and I are happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions for Ms. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. I understand that we're aiming to get parity, but I also am aware that at the moment we charge annual fees as well as user charges, and we didn't discuss that last week. So I'm just want assurance that when we get feedback on the proposal that we're still open-minded. Would that be the case?
Absolutely. So, you know, the standard consultation process, submissions, feedback, and then you go into deliberations. If you want to provide us with a different direction, then that's entirely up to you. But just in relation to the annual fees, I mean, overall the lift in rates, it may seem significant, but in terms of revenue stream for council, it's very small.
Yeah, but we can't. It's not really appropriate to penalise people because we haven't lifted rates in the past. You know what I mean? If we kept on track and done it progressively every triennium or every 3 years or 4 years, it probably wouldn't seem kind of like such a big hike. But I appreciate what you're saying. And the other question I've got is, in the 2 graphs of the prices, in the smaller size craft, you've got a New Zealand average, but in the larger craft, you don't have a New Zealand average, and I just wondered why not.
Can you speak to that, David?
It's on page 7.
I think because it's based on the weight of the aircraft, and therefore it's the per kilo rate, and that per kilo rate is what the comparison is to the New Zealand average.
Yeah, but I just, my reason for asking is that, you know, I'm a layman, not a pilot, and I just looked at, well, there's the New Zealand average, is ours too high or not too high, or fair, and then I go to the bigger aircraft and I go, oh, there's no comparison. Whereas, do you see what I mean? We're comparing one to what's happening all around the rest of the country, and we're not comparing the other to what's happening all around.
Yeah, I see what you mean in terms of the recommendation line.
Yeah, so that's just a question, because I found that confusing, and I've probably been to a number of these discussions, so if I find it confusing, maybe nobody else will. No. So those were my 2 questions. And the other question I wanted to ask, which is kind of a moral question, I suppose, is this about profit or is this about parity?
I think it's about a number of things as laid out in the paper. If you talk about profit, the aerodrome is not going to make a profit even with this change, even if we continue to increase for a number of years, is not going to make a profit. But we have the policy settings, the revenue and financing policy that you have all signed off, and you know the goal was to try to move to user pay, a bit more of user pays. So at the goal was 60%, at the moment it's 8%. So there's quite a gap. So I think it is about equity across the board and the users that are out there. As you can see, there are some users that pay very little and others that pay quite a lot more. It's about trying to align with the market. You know, why should Masterton be the cheapest in New Zealand? You know, why should ratepayers, I suppose, support the users?
Okay, and just one other question following on from that. I've already had some feedback from some users, and one of the questions they've asked is this to help pay for the upgraded hood? Because they feel like they've been penalised for that work, but...
It's a really good question. It has nothing to do with the upgrade at Hood. You know, we got government funding for that work. This is just all in line with trying to move Masterton to the user pays model, you know, provide equity to ratepayers and users. We do have a lot more work that's going to be happening in Hood, so it's going to be a lot more attractive and vibrant for the economy, so we're doing our best to move into that space. This is nothing to do with any of the physical works that's happened.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Helena, then Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. I have a sympathy for the exactly what Bex was talking about. The annual landing fee, for example, Super Air, they are normally very vibrant and they pay a fee of whatever it is. Say if it's $1,000, I don't know whether it's $1,000, but it's close to that. But for the last 12 months or 14 months, they actually haven't done much flying at all. But one thing the council does get, they get that annual fee from them for landing. So I'd have a sympathy for that, and I think it needs to be addressed. The other thing is that with the increase, up till now, there hasn't been a lot of facilities at Hood. And I think from the people I've spoken to, they accept that they're going to have to pay for more because there's more facilities there. And but I think if we get too hungry and put too much onus on increases, we're actually going to chase them away, chase potential people coming away. I think what we need to do is just do it gradually, and as we said the other day, review it annually or even 2 years. So the annual landing fee does need looking at.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Helena.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, Ms. I didn't pick up all of the charge changes that you identified at the start, but along with Councillor Johnson, I'm wondering why we're charging above the average, given this is a significant shift. So yeah, just your thoughts on why for those first 5 categories anyway, why we're charging above the average for New Zealand. That's my first question. My second question is the move towards paying 60% of operational costs by users. I'm wondering how realistic that is, and is that expected to come from just landing charges, or is that rentals and other revenue streams that are generated by the users?
Just in response to your first question, the proposed figures here, Councillor, were as directed by our elected members. So, you know, officers haven't made a call on what should be in the consultation paper. We've taken direction, remembering that this proposal is about the consultation document. So given the process of feedback and submissions, you will have the opportunity to discuss if you want to change direction at that point in time as part of the deliberations.
Okay, so just to clarify, those charges being above average, that was your understanding of our feedback from our workshop?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so they're not set, definitely not set in concrete. And okay, thank you. And the second question?
So I can't speak to the history of the revenue and financing policy, but the 60% user pays is a policy setting. So my understanding is that's the goal, that's the aspiration. the current environment, we are not going to get there, and it would be very difficult. It wouldn't be helpful for council to get to 60% because we won't have anybody who will be able to afford to use the aerodrome. David, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think, Tom, your question is the revenue streams at the airport. We can identify that there's user pays for landings, so actual planes paying to use the airport, and then there's the lease income from leasing out land for people to put hangars on, and they're two separate pieces of revenue. They both go into the external income that helps to fund the airport, and rates is the other main income that funds the airport. So we're looking for the lease income and the landing charges to get to 60%, and we're saying we're well short of that. But in the cost structure, we can identify aeronautical costs, as in supporting the flying, and the land-based costs that support the hangar space. So we're also trying to get to 60% of the aeronautical costs, which we're not doing either, but we're heading closer to that. So we can try and target user pays for the aeronautical costs, and that involves all of the regulation around running an airport and making it safe for those airport users and those flyers.
Yeah, and the 60%, what was the reasoning behind that? Do we know?
I think it goes back to the revenue and financing policy, where the council looks at every activity it undertakes and who benefits from it. Are they able to be identified, and can they be charged? And is there a public good portion of that activity that council is providing that should be paid for by the whole community? So we've done that exercise with every activity the council does, and come up with the user pays rates split, and the airport landed at 60-40. Parks and reserves, Queen Elizabeth Park, for example, we get very little revenue other than from a few leases of coffee carts and things. So the ratio of user pays versus rates is quite different for that activity versus the airport. At the airport, we can identify who uses it, we can identify the leases and land lease income that we get, and so the AIM system that we have that identifies every plane that lands, they have to do a radio call. We know who's using the airport, and we're able to charge for that use. And so this is trying to set an equitable charge close to what the market charges around the country, and evenly, so that if one user uses it far more than another, the one who uses it far more pays more. So that's where we're trying to get to with these charges.
Yeah, no, that explains a lot. Thanks, David. I guess my last wondering is that 60% a reasonable and fair target? But that's for another time, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Lena. Councillor Goodwin.
My question is probably for David, because it's on the depreciation of the airport, which we don't, I believe, charge now. And it's interesting, just going back to when the prices were last done in the year 2010, 2011, the ratepayers paid $129,000 towards the airport, of which $66,000 was depreciation. Currently, the ratepayers are paying $552,000, and I understand there's no depreciation, but that's my question. And in 2 years, in year 3 of the LTP, ratepayers will be paying $1 million for the airport, again, with no depreciation. I gather that there are about 80 main users of the airport whose the fees component that we're discussing today bring in about $23,000. So they're paying an average of about $290 each. And I emailed you this morning a list of ratepayers, quite a few in this town, who are paying in 2 years' time between $500 and $2,000 each, because it's nearly 2% of rates. So this is just about a bit of a catch-up to me. But David, sorry, the question, do we charge depreciation? And if we did, roughly what would it be?
Well, the accounting for the airport includes all expenditure related to the airport, and depreciation is a legitimate expense. So the assets the council owns at the airport, including runway lights, taxiways, fencing, the terminal, they all attract depreciation that reduces the asset over its life. So that there's an expense that we recognise. We don't fund all of that depreciation.
Yeah, what's the gap? That's what I'm asking.
The depreciation number goes from about 180,000 to 380,000 over the first 3 years of the long-term plan. So the investment that we've made in upgrading the runway and the taxiways has increased the amount of depreciation. The amount that we're funding goes from about 100 to 200,000. So there's an increase. There's part of the rates increase in the first 3 years of the plan relates to increasing the amount of depreciation that we fund. So ratepayers and users will be picking up that in the same ratio that we are currently targeting.
But I suppose, just to expand the point, we're not taking the full amount of depreciation that we should, which in my simple way is a ticking time bomb for generations down the road when these things need to be replaced. Is that a fair comment? Or a little bit
It's part of the council's financial strategy to both recognise depreciation and loan funding, and repaying loans and funding depreciation, and not doing all of those things. So there is $6 million of loan funding that's gone into the airport upgrades, as well as the 10 million funding from the government. And that loan funding is going to be repaid over, I think, 25 years. The council's rates and user pays are funding that debt repayment and funding it before we fund all the depreciation. So we're not looking to fund depreciation and fund debt repayment at the same time. That would be overcharging the current ratepayers and current users of the airport. So that's part of the council's financial strategy in managing the assets and the revenue and operating costs that we've got in our long-term plan. So just isolating depreciation isn't seeing the big picture.
No, but I suppose that's what I'm just asking you, because sometimes we don't fully account for depreciation.
Fund. We account for it, but we don't necessarily raise the revenue.
So if you, putting aside the loans, I understand that is in place of depreciation in many ways. But the assets that are left, are we depreciating, accounting for the full amount of depreciation on those assets that aren't covered by a loan? That's my question.
Yes.
No.
Yes, we are.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Maz, just follow on about the annual fee, because a few people have raised it. My understanding is that the annual fee that we currently charge is on the plane. It's not on the hangar. So, for example, I understand that we have the leases for the hangar and the user pays for the landing. However, if somebody has a hangar and has 6 planes in there but never uses them, at the moment we're getting a fee for that because it's their, it's like parking the car, I suppose. And it just concerns me that if somebody had a big hangar and was storing planes, that there's a lost revenue stream for council for for the capability of storing the planes at the airport. What's your...
I think they're two different service offerings. So
I agree.
Yeah, and I think we need to deal with them as two separate offerings. In terms of loss of revenue, if you move away from the annual billing model, David can probably talk potentially a bit to that. But from a commercial perspective, you have your leases, and we are doing work in that space, and we've indicated to our users out there that we are doing a review there, and then you have the use of the aerodrome. I think they're two very separate things.
Oh, no, I agree with you, but I'm just saying that there's an opportunity here to continue with a revenue stream for people who store their cars at hot aerodrome planes, but don't use them, because I liken it to a gym membership. People pay $500 for a gym membership, but might never go.
That's right. I suppose it depends on how much that fee is.
Yeah. Further to this meeting, is it possible to email us what the annual fee charges are currently and what revenue we get from that?
I'm happy to take advice from you, Karen. Is it best to do that or wait for the submissions process?
Just between now and deliberations even.
Because I imagine there will be, quite a bit of feedback that will come through, so there'll be a number of things that you will want to discuss.
Just if we could get it additional to when we come to that stage.
If they're relevant, so if the annual fee is incorporated, or we're looking to change the annual fee as part of these changes, or if these changes are only looking at increasing the landing fees.
No, these changes are looking at dropping the annual fee altogether, aren't they?
It's moving to this proposed model.
Yes.
So if
it's relevant to what we're proposing, then we can provide that information. If it's not relevant to what we're proposing, then it would be outside of your deliberations.
I look forward to it then. Thank you.
I can just add, as a plane over the 600 kg, so the next one up from the microlight, paying $160 is an annual fee to land any time on the airport for the year. If they choose not to use it, they don't have to pay the annual charge. They can say, I don't want to pay an annual charge. There's no compulsion to pay $160. They pay that so that they can land and take off any time they want.
So it's not a use it or lose it?
No. So at the moment, they've got the choice.
It only applies if they
say, I want an annual charge, and they pay $160.
Because I think it's a bit of a grey area, and I feel
we'll provide a bit more context around that.
Yeah, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
Mayor, from my point of view, and like everybody around the table, or most around the table, I guess I've already had feedback as well. Most of it I must say from users who understand the position we're in, but perhaps need a bit of clarification. But I see in the consultation that there are a couple of, and I think this needs to be stressed, there are a couple of information sessions which we will be talking directly to the users before the consultation closes. Could you, those information sessions, if you could just expand a little bit, because I think the users would be, I think that's really important. And I just wonder if you could tell us, the information sessions will be regarding this document, or will
It'll be, it's about the consultation and the proposal, and how these the new rates may apply. So I think it is important to note that under legislation we actually only have to consult with 3 users. So we are going wider to give everybody an opportunity to have their say. We know this is going to be contentious, but strictly speaking we really only have to consult with 3 users.
Yeah, that was actually the point I was trying to make, is that I guess you could say that we're being quite generous in the sense that we're looking to consult a lot wider than we actually need to.
I think so, but
we're
it's
taking this hellish seriously, and we know that we're going to get a lot of feedback on it, and we're willing to listen to everybody, basically, that's got something to say.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's important, because this is a big change, and I think we need to reflect the fact that it is a big change and that we are consulting this widely. And so I'd like to congratulate the officers on the way you set that up. I think that's really important. Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I know I'm being a bit of a nag. Just one other question. On page 12 of the document, it says that it talks about the aim of this review. And it says, by undertaking this review, we hope to address the following issues. And one bullet point is low utilisation. Personally, I think that's a weird bullet point to have, because if you're putting the fees up and you're trying to address low utilisation...
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's kind of like saying an honest
it's
lawyer.
It's more of an outcome, it's more of an acknowledgement that
So
that
I've had
is
a bit
the
of
case.
bite back from that.
Okay.
If you want more people to use it, why do you put the fees up? And I know that I agree with the process of putting the fees up, and it's long overdue, but I just felt that bullet point's a little bit of a slap in the face. Because we're saying
Happy
we're trying to
remove
address...
Happy to remove that.
Because we're saying we're trying to address low utilisation. Normally people give added value or discount to increase activity.
Just respond. I think the point of including that is part of the consideration, is that we do have low utilisation, so therefore we need to incorporate the fees to be able to match the low utilisation. It's not trying to suggest that we're trying to improve the utilisation rate.
I think maybe...
But that might not be what people are
maybe look at the wording of that then, maybe, because that's not how it comes across. Thank you. I'll finish now.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Probably for you, Karen. Is this the only targeted consultation that we do? Like if we have consultation around dog fees, do we only consult with dog owners?
No, because many people have dogs, but where we're specifically required to consult with that part of the community. So we do often carry out just targeted consultations. So I'm just thinking, when we were looking at the cycle lanes down past the school, we carried out consultations specifically with people in that area. And so when we do things like bylaw changes, if we're adding in cycle paths or whatever, it directly affects those people who live nearby, so we only carry out consultation with those people nearby. So yes, we do, and also, as Maz said, that we are required under the legislation to consult just with those users, and so we've decided to expand that to be all users rather than just the 3. We have decided to consult with the whole of the community. Well, we did think about that, and really that aspect of the public-private is part of the revenue and financing policy, the 60%. So when we consulted on the revenue and financing policy, that was the opportunity for the broader community to say, actually, I think 60 is too much or too few. And we may very well look again at that policy setting next time we come to look at and consult on the revenue and financing policy as part of the next LTP. Very long answer to your question, but yes, we do.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If there's no further questions, I will ask that somebody move the recommendation on page 6, and adding to that recommendation that we authorise the Mayor and the CE to approve the correction and any... Will you read this?
Okay, sorry, it's my handwriting. Authorises the Mayor and the Chief Executive to approve the correction of any minor typographical, editorial, arithmetic and formatting errors that may be identified, including adding the New Zealand average charge for groups 6 to 9 to respond to Councillor Johnson's point.
Somebody prepared to move that? Move Councillor Goodman, seconded Councillor Tuta. Any further discussion? Councillor Tuta.
I agree with 60%, mainly because I can't afford a plane, so I don't use it. But I see that I'm happy to pay for public good in my rates. And there must be lots of people like me who can't afford fly. So they don't really want to, I'm sure, want to pay a lot of money as well. So I think that user pays is fair, and I think that 60% is fair. And if it's 60% in bus, it must be 60% in lots of other things that we consider. I suppose when you look at past charges, the ratepayers must subsidise those. So I just think that this consultation will be a fairer thing for our community, because people look at equity. That's something that we need to consider, as we're supposed to be one of the poorest socio-economic areas in New Zealand. So I agree, and I hope that we can have equity for our ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Tudor. Any further discussion? There's no further
Just
discussion.
one thing, please. You wish?
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, oh,
Sorry, Councillor Helena. Councillor Nelson, then Councillor Helena.
Thank you. I just want to, in relation to something that Beck said earlier, I don't see this as a punishment for the sudden hike. I think it should be seen as these users have been extremely fortunate to not have the prices raised for such a long period of time. So the fact they're going up suddenly to what's, around the New Zealand average, I think that's good for now, but I don't see it as being a punishment, a sudden punishment.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Helena.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's probably a discussion following the submissions that come in at our next meeting, but I'll make my point now. We're never going to cover that 60% operational cost, in my view, and certainly we're never going to cover it with landing fees, unless of course we get an airline that pays its own full cost and lands regularly, or we get a flight school, or we grow the number of users. And I think I'm concerned that where our charges are above the average, that's likely to be a disincentive to many of the users who don't fly that often anyway. And I think we need to see this as an investment in the town, in the community. We've invested $17 million already, $7 million of our own money and $10 million of government money. And we need to see it as an investment that will grow tourism, that will grow business, and we get our return that way. We're never going to get a return from the users. And I think it's a real risk if we raise the rates too much, that we will end up with no users. And I don't agree with the idea if you are paying a lease on a big hangar space and you might have 10 aircraft in there that never fly, we're going to charge you an annual fee as well. It's a bit like renting a house. You pay your rent and then you have to pay an additional rent for living in your house. I can't see the point in that and the advantage in that. But for me, it's we need to be careful with our fees, in my view, because we've got very limited people using it now, and we know there's an inverse relationship between rising prices and demand, and so we just need to be careful in that space. But our focus should be on growing this hood aerodrome as an asset for tourism and aviation-related industry. And I think that's where our community is going to get its return, not through a user pay system.
Thank you, Councillor Lena. Just from my point of view, and following on from what Councillor Lena says, one of the things I've always thought about Hood is that it is a regional facility. and that it's about time that the other councils in the area started to look on it as a regional facility. If there's an earthquake or a tsunami or anything strikes Wellington, it becomes such an important part of our district. And whilst I know that this isn't about talking other councils into perhaps becoming more involved in sharing the costs, I think that further down the track that's something we need to look at, is that this is a regional facility, not just a Masterton facility. So that's what I'm certainly looking at in the future. Okay, we have a recommendation put by Councillor Goodwin, seconded by Councillor Tuta. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you so much, and thanks, Mayors and the staff, for the work that you've done on that. We now move to the... Oh no, we don't. We've got a workshop afterwards, don't we? We don't have the closing karakia. I'll now close this extraordinary meeting of Council, and thank you for your attendance.
Do we come back to the 11th?